You stand before a mirror, but the reflection isn't quite your own. It's a shadow self, a potentiality, both terrifying and undeniably alluring. This entity possesses a mind so fortress-like, so piercingly insightful, that it doesn't just command respect. It evokes a primal, unsettling awe in others. Their eyes, when they meet yours, betray a flicker of discomfort, a recognition of an intellect so formidable it borders on the supernatural. They sense an impenetrable core, a will unbending, a perception that sees through the layers of pretense and illusion that most people build their lives upon. This isn't about arrogance or dominance in the crude sense. It's something far more profound. It's the quiet power of a mind that has dissected its own fears, wrestled with its deepest vulnerabilities, and emerged not unscathed, but undeniably transformed, forged in the fires of introspection and ruthless self-honesty. It's the kind of mind that, like a diamond, has been subjected to immense pressure and emerged with an unbearable clarity, sharp enough to cut through the densest fog of human deception, both self-imposed and externally projected. Consider the common human experience, the whisper of doubt, the paralysis of indecision, the relentless pursuit of external validation. We are, by and large, creatures of the herd, defined by our reactions to the world rather than our deliberate actions within it. We construct elaborate mental frameworks to protect fragile egos, to avoid the searing pain of self-examination. We cling to comforting narratives, even when they unravel before our eyes, because the alternative, the terrifying expanse of unvarnished truth, feels too vast, too desolate. We allow our emotions to be dictated by fleeting external circumstances, our convictions to be shaped by the loudest voices, our very identities to be a patchwork quilt of societal expectations and borrowed beliefs. Is this truly living, or merely existing within a prison of our own making, albeit one with comfortable furnishings? But what if you could break free from this inherited intellectual lethargy? What if you could cultivate a mental landscape so disciplined, so rigorously self-aware, that the superficial anxieties and manufactured crises of the world simply ceased to register with the same intensity? What if your inner world became a sanctuary of unshakable conviction, a crucible where thought is forged into an instrument of unparalleled precision? What if you could silence the cacophony of external noise and listen, truly listen, to the resonant hum of your own authentic being? This isn't a call to become a ruthless automaton, devoid of empathy. Quite the opposite. It's an invitation to develop an empathy so profound that it understands the root causes of human behavior, both noble and ignoble, without being swayed by their surface manifestations. About building a mind that understands the game without becoming a pawn within it. A mind that observes the currents of human nature with the dispassionate gaze of a scientist, yet possesses the soulful depth of a philosopher. Have you ever felt the subtle tremor of unease when encountering someone who seems utterly impervious to manipulation, whose convictions are not just stated but embodied, whose gaze holds an unsettling depth of understanding? They don't need to raise their voice or flex their power. Their very presence communicates a formidable internal architecture. They don't react, they respond. They don't conform, they define. And in their quiet strength, there is a challenge, an implicit question directed at your own complacency. What have you done to truly fortify your own mind? This is the journey we embark on. To understand the alchemy of such a mind, to uncover the hidden principles that transform fragile human consciousness into an unyielding force. It is a path not for the faint of heart, for it demands a brutal confrontation with oneself, a willingness to dismantle cherished illusions. But the reward, a freedom, a clarity, a power that reshapes not just your own existence, but your very impact on the world, leaving in your wake not just respect, but a profound, almost terrifying recognition of a soul utterly, magnificently unbound. Are you prepared to delve into the hidden problem, the insidious forces that prevent most from ever even conceiving of such an ascent? To answer that question, we must venture into the shadowy catacombs of the human psyche, into the very architecture of our consciousness. The reason most minds remain fragile, malleable, and ultimately predictable is not due to a lack of intelligence or potential. It is due to a profound, almost instinctual flight from a single, fundamental truth: the inescapable reality of suffering and the terrifying burden of absolute freedom. We are born into a state of what the existentialists, like Jean-Paul Sartre, called radical freedom, a condition of being condemned to be free. This means that at our core, we are responsible for creating our own meaning in a meaningless universe. This is a terrifying abyss to stare into, an unbearable weight for the unprepared mind. So, what do? We engage in what Sartre termed bad faith. We flee from this freedom. We pretend we are not the authors of our own lives. We construct an identity from external sources: our job title, our nationality, our social circle, the approval of others. We tell ourselves like, I am this way because of my past, or I have no choice. This is the first and most critical act of self-deception, the foundational crack in the mind's fortress. We trade the terrifying throne of a sovereign for the comfortable shackles of a puppet, and we call it identity. We willingly become objects in a world of objects rather than the subject of our own existence. This flight from freedom is fueled by a deeper, more primal engine described by philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer. He saw life as governed by a relentless, blind, striving force, the will to live. This will is a constant source of desire and therefore a constant source of suffering, as desire is, by its nature, a state of lack. The average human response is not to confront this will, to understand it or master it, but to desperately numb it. We seek endless distractions, fleeting pleasures, and trivial pursuits. A frantic attempt to silence the ceaseless roar of our own existential engine. This is the world Aldous Huxley warned of in Brave New World. Not a prison of overt tyranny, but a gilded cage of infinite amusement and manufactured happiness. Our soma is the endless scroll, the binge-worthy series, the hollow validation of a social media notification. This constant stream of low-grade dopamine neuters our capacity for deep thought, for sustained focus, for the uncomfortable silence required for true self-examination. It keeps the mind perpetually agitated and shallow, terrified of being left alone with itself for even a moment. This aversion to discomfort leads us directly to the territory of Friedrich Nietzsche and his chilling prophecy of the last man. The last man is the ultimate outcome of a society that prizes comfort and security above all else. He is a creature who has invented happiness, a state of listless contentment, free from risk, ambition, and struggle. The last man blinks. What is love? What is creation? What is a star? He asks, and he blinks. He has no great aspirations, for they are too demanding. He has no great sorrows, for they are too painful. He is the epitome of a weak, domesticated mind, a being for whom the very idea of self-overcoming is a foreign and distasteful concept. The hidden problem is that our modern world is an incubator for the last man. It actively encourages us to flee from anything that might build strength: pain, failure, solitude, and heartbreak. But perhaps the most insidious force is the one that lurks within. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the repository of everything we repress about ourselves. It is our inner darkness, our capacity for envy, greed, rage, and cruelty. The vast majority of people spend their entire lives running from their own shadow. They project it onto others, creating enemies and scapegoats to carry the burden of their own disowned darkness. This is why the world is so rife with blame, judgment, and tribalism. It is the collective projection of unexamined shadows. A mind that refuses to confront its own potential for evil can never be truly strong. It is living a lie, a carefully curated performance of goodness. The truly formidable individual is not the one who pretends to have no darkness, but the one who has journeyed into their own abyss, faced their inner demons, and integrated them. They understand their own monstrous capabilities, and in that understanding, they gain true control. This is the source of that terrifying aura. You are in the presence of someone who has met their own monster and tamed it. So, the hidden problem is a hydra-headed beast. We are fleeing our existential freedom, Sartre, into a state of comfortable numbness, Huxley, medicating the inherent suffering of existence, Schopenhauer, avoiding the heroic struggle required for greatness, Nietzsche, all while vehemently denying the darkest parts of our own nature, Jung. This is the grand conspiracy of mediocrity, an unspoken agreement to remain comfortably numb and psychologically fragile. It is the path of least resistance, the gentle slope that leads to a life of quiet desperation. This is not just a philosophical abstraction. This deeply ingrained flight from truth has devastating, unseen consequences. It silently architects the prisons in which we live, shaping our perceptions, dictating our choices, and ensuring we remain predictable cogs in a machine we don't even realize exists. What are the walls of this prison made of? How does this psychological cowardice manifest in our daily reality, creating a feedback loop of weakness? This flight from truth, this deep instinctual recoil from the burdens of freedom and suffering, does more than simply leave the mind weakened. It actively constructs the invisible architecture of your reality. It is the silent, unseen ghost in the machine of your consciousness, and its consequences are woven into the very fabric of your perception, your emotions, and your choices. You are living within a prison whose walls are so seamless, so familiar, that you have mistaken them for the horizon. Let's begin with the prison of perception. Your brain, in its desperate attempt to avoid the psychological pain of cognitive dissonance, becomes a hyper-efficient sorting machine. It develops what is far more insidious than a simple confirmation bias. It adopts a totalizing worldview, defense mechanism. Any information that challenges your core beliefs, the ones you've adopted to feel safe and certain, is not just ignored, but perceived as a threat, an attack. Neurologically, your brain processes a challenging idea with the same alarm as it would a physical danger. The consequence is an intellect that can no longer learn, but only reinforce. Your mind becomes an echo chamber, a hall of mirrors, reflecting back only what is comfortable and familiar. You are trapped in a feedback loop of your own ideology, and the walls of this prison are papered with the headlines, articles, and opinions that tell you you are right. True strength requires the ability to hold contradictory ideas in tension, to dissect opposing viewpoints with cold objectivity. But your mind, conditioned for comfort, has lost this capacity. It has traded the expansive, dangerous ocean of truth for a small, safe, and utterly stagnant pond. This cognitive prison is reinforced by a neurological one. By constantly seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, you are waging a chemical war against your own resilience. Every time you choose the path of least resistance, the mindless scroll over the difficult book, the comforting lie over the harsh truth, the fleeting distraction over profound focus, you are training your brain's reward system. You're teaching your dopamine pathways to fire only for cheap, easy stimulation. This creates the hedonic treadmill. You require more and more stimulation to achieve the same baseline level of satisfaction. More importantly, it creates an extreme intolerance for its opposite: boredom, struggle, and effort. The very neurochemical state required for building a strong mind, prolonged, deep concentration on difficult tasks, becomes almost physically painful. Your own brain chemistry begins to work against you, making weakness the default, neurologically enforced setting. You are not lazy. You have been systematically conditioned for it. You are a slave to an overactive amygdala and a dysregulated dopamine system, perpetually hijacked by your most primitive impulses for comfort and safety. From here, the consequences bleed out into the social realm, creating the prison of the collective. Your predictable, neurologically conditioned responses make you the perfect consumer, the perfect citizen, the perfect pawn. Political strategists, advertisers, and tech companies understand your hidden fears better than you do. They know how to trigger your shadow projections, manufacturing enemies to stoke your outrage. They know how to feed your confirmation bias, creating tribal identities that give you a sense of belonging at the cost of your individuality. Your outrage, which feels so righteous and personal, is often a manufactured product, sold to you to keep you engaged, clicking, and compliant. You are kept in a state of perpetual, low-grade agitation, convinced you are fighting a vital battle, while the true war, the war for your own sovereignty of mind, is lost before it even begins. Perhaps most perversely, this weakness is now lauded as a virtue. In our therapeutic culture, the language of trauma has been co-opted to pathologize discomfort. Ideas are no longer just disagreeable, they are harmful. Arguments are not just challenging, they are attacks. We are encouraged to build safe spaces to protect ourselves from the psychological friction necessary for growth, creating a generation of minds that are as brittle as glass. We demand the world accommodate our fragility, rather than demanding we cultivate the strength to meet the world. This is the ultimate inversion. The prison is reframed as a sanctuary. The chains are redefined as safety blankets. And the act of fortifying the mind against the harsh realities of existence is recast as a form of self-abuse. The final devastating consequence is this. You lose the ability to distinguish between what you truly want and what you have been conditioned to want. Your desires are not your own. Your goals are not your own. Your fears are not your own. They have been implanted in you by a culture that profits from your predictability. You chase after a vision of success, happiness, and meaning that was sold to you, and you wonder why, upon achieving it, you feel a hollow emptiness. The unseen tragedy is not that you are in a prison. It is that you are the one who locks the door every night, believing you are keeping yourself safe. Every moment spent in this state reinforces the walls. Every choice made from a place of fear deepens the neurological ruts of weakness. The urgency is this. You are not merely stagnating. You are actively participating in the ossification of your own soul. But what if the way out isn't a frontal assault? What if breaking down the walls is impossible from the inside? What if the path to liberation requires a move so counterintuitive, so paradoxical, that it feels like a form of madness? What if the rebellion begins not with a fight, but with a radical redefinition of victory itself? The rebellion you seek does not begin with a clenched fist, but with an open hand. It is not a declaration of war on the world, but a declaration of peace with reality. The prisons of perception, neurology, and culture are all built upon a single foundation: your desperate, frantic resistance to what is. You fight against pain, you flee from discomfort, you argue with your own fate. This very struggle is the energy source that powers your cage. The act of pushing against the bars is what convinces you they are solid. The radical, terrifying, and liberating truth is this. The way out is not to break the walls down, but to realize they are made of smoke. This rebellion begins with a shift in perspective so profound it borders on madness. It is the shift from resistance to embrace. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is not passive resignation. It is not shrugging your shoulders and accepting mediocrity. It is an active, joyful, and defiant affirmation of everything that has ever happened, is happening, and will ever happen to you. It is looking at your life in all its brutal chaos, its exquisite pain, its unfairness, and its heartbreaks, and saying, "Yes, I will it to be so." Again. Why is this the ultimate act of rebellion? Because a mind that can love its fate cannot be controlled. A system designed to manipulate you through your fears and desires becomes utterly powerless against a consciousness that desires everything and fears nothing. How do you cultivate this almost superhuman mindset? You begin by systematically unlearning your lifelong addiction to comfort. You must become a warrior of the mind, and like any warrior, you must train. This is the practice of voluntary discomfort. The ancient Stoics, masters of this art, understood this perfectly. Seneca would periodically live as if he were impoverished, eating simple food and wearing coarse clothing, not because he was a masochist, but because he was inoculating his mind against the fear of poverty. You must do the same. Take the cold shower. Fast for a day. Sleep on the floor. Deliberately choose the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Each time you willingly step into a controlled dose of discomfort, you are sending a powerful signal to your nervous system. You are teaching your primitive amygdala that uncomfortable is not synonymous with dangerous. You are rewiring your dopamine pathways to derive satisfaction not from the easy pleasure, but from the act of discipline itself. You are forging resilience, one deliberate, uncomfortable choice at a time. Next, you must weaponize your own imagination against your fears. This is the art of negative visualization, another potent tool of the Stoics. While the weak mind obsesses over positive affirmations, desperately trying to conjure a world without problems, the rebel mind does the opposite. You sit in silence and vividly, unflinchingly, imagine losing the things you hold most dear. Imagine your career collapses. Imagine your reputation is destroyed. Imagine the people you love are gone. The purpose is not to induce despair, but to achieve a state of profound psychological invulnerability. By mentally rehearsing the worst-case scenarios, you strip them of their power. You expose your fears as paper tigers. You come to the deep, embodied realization that even if the worst were to happen, you would endure. You would survive. The man who has already died in his mind 1,000 times fears no single death. This practice builds what Marcus Aurelius called the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind so secure that the chaos of the external world cannot breach its walls. Consider the samurai who lived by the code of Bushido. The core principle was to live one's life as if already dead. By accepting the ultimate fate, they were liberated from the fear of it, allowing them to act with impossible clarity, focus, and courage on the battlefield. This is amor fati in its most extreme and beautiful form. It is the ultimate paradox of power. In total surrender to fate lies total freedom of action. In the acceptance of death lies the secret to a vibrant life. This is how you break free. You stop fighting the storm and you become it. You stop resisting the friction of life and you use it to sharpen yourself into a blade. This is not a one-time decision. It is a relentless, daily practice. It is a quiet revolution waged in the silent moments of choice, to press the snooze button or to rise to the cold, to consume mindless content or to create something of value, to shy away from a challenge or to actively seek it out. You reclaim your agency not by trying to control the world, which is impossible, but by seizing absolute, unconditional control over your own mind, which is the only thing that was ever truly yours to begin with. As you rebuild your mind on this new foundation of voluntary discomfort and radical acceptance, you begin to perceive the world differently. The static of fear and desire that once clouded your vision begins to fade. But this clarity is merely the beginning. It is the forging of the instrument. What is the ultimate truth that this newly fortified consciousness is finally able to see? What is the final, shattering realization that awaits on the other side of this rebellion? A realization that reframes the entire human experience. You have followed the path. You have practiced the rebellion. You have subjected your body to the cold, your mind to the imagined abyss, your spirit to the radical acceptance of amor fati. The instrument is forged, the lens is polished. The constant, frantic chatter of the ego, that terrified narrator who has been screaming in your head since birth, has finally begun to quiet. In this newfound silence, a new kind of perception is born, and with it comes the final, most powerful realization. A truth so vast, it shatters the very foundation of the reality you thought you knew. The journey you have undertaken was never about building a stronger you. It was about systematically dismantling the very idea of you altogether. Look inward, with the unblinking clarity you have so painfully cultivated. Look for the self you have been trying to protect, the ego you have been trying to fortify. Where is it? Is it in your thoughts? Thoughts arise and pass like clouds. Is it in your emotions? Feelings surge and recede like tides. Is it in your body? The body is a collection of fleeting sensations, constantly changing. The harder you look for a solid, permanent, independent self, the more you realize there is nothing there. The I you have spent your life defending is an illusion. It is a story, a bundle of memories, habits, and conditioned responses woven together so tightly that it creates the convincing mirage of a solid entity. All of your suffering, every fear, every insecurity stemmed from the desperate attempt to protect and validate this phantom. This is the ultimate secret that the strong mind discovers. You are not the character in the story of your life. You are not the wave frantically trying to hold its shape. You are the ocean. The entire rebellion, the voluntary discomfort, the negative visualization, the love of fate, was a meticulously designed process to break your identification with the wave. It was designed to make you so comfortable with pain, loss, and chaos that the terrified little wave self simply gives up its struggle and dissolves back into the boundless water from which it came. This is the source of the terror you inspire in others. When they look at you, they are no longer meeting a predictable ego, a fellow character playing the same game of fear and desire. Their ego looks for your ego and finds nothing. It finds a calm, silent, spacious awareness. To a mind that is defined by its own noise, this silence is terrifying. It is a void, a mirror reflecting their own frantic, baseless identity back at them. They are not afraid of your strength. They are afraid of your emptiness, for it reveals the secret of their own. But for you, this emptiness is not a lack. It is a plenum. It is the womb of all possibility. It is absolute freedom. With this realization, the entire human drama is reframed. Life ceases to be a battle to be won and becomes a play to be witnessed. You are the awareness observing the character of you as it moves through the world. You can watch it experience joy, pain, success, and failure without being completely consumed by them. The pain is still felt, but you are not the pain. The ambition is still present, but you are not the ambition. You are the silent, unmoving screen upon which the movie of your life is projected. You can now engage with the world with an intensity and effectiveness you never thought possible because your actions are no longer crippled by the need for a specific outcome. You are no longer acting to protect a fragile identity. You are acting from a place of pure, unburdened presence. Look again into that mirror from the beginning. The reflection is no longer a shadow self or a forged fortress. The eyes that look back are not the eyes of a stoic warrior. They are not your eyes at all. There is no one there. And in that perfect, luminous emptiness, there is everything. You see the universe contemplating itself through a temporary human aperture. The path is now clear. The ultimate truth is not something to be learned, but a reality to be uncovered within your own being. The work is not to add more, but to strip away everything that is not true. Find the courage to sit in the silence. Find the strength to face your own non-existence. The world is terrified of a mind that has come home to itself, a mind that has found perfect peace in the heart of the void. Will you be the one to finally come home?